The city was already wide awake and buzzing, but for him, the day was just another page in a very long, familiar book. He was a delivery driver, a man who spent his life on the road, his world defined by the four walls of his truck and the endless stream of addresses on his manifest. His name was Leo, and if you asked him, he could describe the weight of a three-seater sofa better than he could describe his favorite movie. He knew which streets were narrow, which ones had the worst potholes, and where you could never, ever find a parking spot. It was a tough job, but he took pride in it. He was the guy who brought you the new dining table for your family dinners, or the comfortable armchair where you'd finally relax after a long day. He worked for a small family-run furniture company. It wasn't a giant corporation. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names. His partner, a cheerful, strong man who was always whistling tunes, helped him heave and shuffle the heavy items. Together, they were a good team, a well-oiled machine navigating the chaotic dance of city traffic and tricky stairwells. This particular Tuesday morning felt like any other. The sky was a flat, pale gray, promising neither rain nor sunshine. Leo gulped down the last of his tea from a thermos, the warm liquid a small comfort before the day's labor began. He scanned the list of jobs on his digital device. Most of it was standard. A bed frame to an apartment in Islington, a bookshelf to a house in Holloway. But one entry made him pause. It was a pickup, not a delivery. That was a bit less common. They were usually dropping things off, not collecting them. The item listed was upright piano. Leo let out a low whistle. Pianos were notorious. They were awkward, incredibly heavy, and fragile all at once. They weren't like a flat-pack cupboard. They were a beast of solid wood, metal strings, and a million delicate parts inside. The pickup was from a residential address in Camden, an area known for its colorful houses and bustling markets. The destination was a church hall in Hackney. Probably a donation, his partner said, reading Leo's thoughts. Maybe for a community choir or something. Leo nodded. It made sense. Still, he felt a twinge of apprehension. Moving a piano was never simple. They navigated the truck through the tight, busy streets of Camden, finally pulling up outside a neat, terraced house with a bright blue door. It looked well kept, with a small, tidy garden. An elderly woman was waiting for them by the gate, as if she had been standing there for a while. She had soft white hair styled simply and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners, though they also held a deep, thoughtful sadness. She introduced herself as Alara. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice soft but clear. She led them through the house, which smelled faintly of polish and old books, into a cozy living room, and there it was. The piano dominated the space. It was an old upright model, the kind you might see in a vintage photograph. Its black finish was chipped and scratched in many places, showing the pale wood underneath. The ivory keys were not bright white anymore, but a creamy aged color, and some of them had tiny hairline cracks. You could just tell it had been there for decades, a silent witness to the life of the house. "Been in the family a long time?" Leo asked, making conversation as he and his partner prepared their moving equipment. "All my life," Alara replied, her gaze fixed on the instrument. She reached out and gently touched the lid, her fingers tracing the wood grain as if she were reading a story written there. "It has seen so much. So many memories are stored in this wood." There was a heavy, emotional weight to her words that made Leo look up from strapping his trolley. This wasn't just a piece of furniture to her. It was a part of her history. The actual moving process was as difficult as Leo had feared. The piano was even heavier than it looked. It groaned and creaked as they carefully tilted it onto the special trolley. He and his partner had to communicate with short, sharp words, their muscles straining as they navigated the bulky instrument through the doorway, down the narrow path, and towards the waiting truck. The ramp groaned under the weight. With one final coordinated heave, they got it safely into the back of the truck. Leo secured it with sturdy straps to stop it from shifting during the journey, wrapping it in moving blankets to protect its already worn surface. He was about to close the truck's rear doors when Alara appeared beside him. She had a small, wistful smile on her face, but her eyes were glistening with unshed tears. She placed a hand on his arm, stopping him for a moment. "Promise me you'll take good care of it," she said, her tone more pleading than instructing. "Of course, ma'am," Leo replied, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. "Standard procedure. We'll treat it with care." But she shook her head slowly, her gaze intense. "No, I mean, truly take care of it. It has a long journey ahead. A much longer journey than you might think. Her words hung in the damp air. They were strange, cryptic. What did she mean? It was just going from Camden to Hackney, a trip of a few miles. Before Leo could ask her what she meant, she had already given his arm a gentle pat, turned around and walked back towards her blue door, disappearing inside her quiet house. Leo stood there for a second, puzzled. He shrugged it off. People got emotional about their old belongings, especially something big and sentimental like a piano. He closed the truck doors with a heavy thud, locking the old instrument in the dark. He climbed into the driver's seat, the mystery of the woman's words already fading, replaced by the more immediate concerns of traffic and the next delivery. The piano was just another item on the list, a heavy old object he had to move from point A to point B. He had no idea that this Tuesday was different. He had no clue that the old piano in the back of his truck was not just carrying the weight of wood and wire, but the heavy, silent weight of a story waiting to be heard. His ordinary day was about to become anything but. The truck rumbled away from the quiet street in Camden. The old piano settled securely in the back. For a while, Leo and his partner drove in comfortable silence, the only sounds being the hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of the straps holding the piano in place. Leo found his thoughts drifting back to the elderly woman and her strange, heartfelt words. A long journey ahead. It was an odd thing to say. He glanced in his rearview mirror, almost as if he could see the piano through the wall of the cab. It was just a short trip across the city. What could she have meant? His partner broke the silence, whistling a tune. "Nice lady," he said. "Sad to see the old piano go, though. You can tell it meant a lot to her." "Yeah," Leo replied, his eyes back on the road. You could feel it, but he pushed the thoughts aside. In his job, you met all kinds of people, each with their own stories and their own attachments to the things they were giving away or receiving. It was part of the landscape. They navigated through the busy lunchtime traffic, the tall buildings of central London eventually giving way to the different character of Hackney. They found the church hall without much trouble, a sturdy red brick building with a small, well-kept garden at the front. A man in a practical jacket was waiting outside, a clipboard in his hand. He looked efficient and busy. "Right on time," the man said with a brisk smile as Leo hopped out of the truck. "You're here with the keyboard?" Leo felt a first small knot of confusion form in his stomach. "Keyboard? No, we're here with a piano, a pickup from Camden for you." The man's smile faded, replaced by a look of polite confusion. He consulted his clipboard, flipping a page. "A piano? No, that can't be right. We're expecting a new digital keyboard for the youth club. We definitely didn't arrange a pickup for a piano." The knot in Leo's stomach tightened. He pulled out his own device, showing the man the order. "See, upright piano. Pickup from Camden. Delivery to this address." The church hall coordinator looked from the screen to Leo's face, his expression now one of genuine puzzlement. "I'm sorry, there must be a mix-up. We have no record of this. We have no space for an upright piano, and we certainly didn't order one." A phone call to Leo's office only made things worse. His manager at the furniture company was just as confused. "There's no pickup order for a piano to a church hall on our system today, Leo." His manager's voice crackled through the phone. "The only thing for that address is a delivery for a new office chair, and that's not until tomorrow. You must have the wrong information, but I have the order right here on my screen," Leo insisted, frustration beginning to creep into his voice. He looked at the heavy truck, at the enormous effort it had taken to load the piano, and now it was all for nothing. It was a mistake. After a back-and-forth discussion, the policy was clear. The church wouldn't accept it. They couldn't take it back to the woman's house without authorization. The only option, his manager said, was to take it to the city's bulk waste disposal unit. It was to be treated as unscheduled rubbish. The company couldn't afford to have a truck and two men tied up with a ghost job all day. Leo felt a heavy disappointment settle over him. All that work, the old woman's trust, and it was all ending in a trip to the dump. It felt wrong, deeply wrong. He thanked the church hall coordinator, who offered a sympathetic shrug before heading back inside. For a few minutes, Leo just stood on the pavement, staring at his truck. He thought of Ilara's face, the way her hand had rested on the piano lid. Take good care of it. And here he was, about to drive it to a scrapyard to be crushed. The image didn't sit well with him. It felt like he was betraying a silent promise. His partner was already in the passenger seat, ready to head to the next proper job. But Leo hesitated. He pulled out his phone again and found the number for the pickup from his manifest. He had to call her. He had to tell her what had happened. It was the only right thing to do. The phone rang a few times before her soft, familiar voice answered. Hello? Hello, ma'am. This is Leo, the delivery driver who picked up your piano this morning. Yes. Hello, she said, her voice warm with recognition. There's been a bit of a problem, Leo explained, trying to keep his tone gentle. The church hall says they weren't expecting a piano. They don't know anything about it. My office has no record of the job either. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to have to. Well, the only place I can take it is the disposal unit. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Leo wondered if the call had dropped. Then he heard a soft sigh. Oh, I see, Alara said. Her voice wasn't angry or upset. It was calm, almost resigned. There is no mistake, young man. No mistake. Leo asked, his confusion deepening. What do you mean? The piano was never for the church, she explained, her words measured and clear. It was for the man who would come for it. I was simply told to give it to the delivery driver. I was following instructions. Leo was completely lost now. His brain scrambled to make sense of her words.
Told by who?
What instructions? I don't understand. Its journey is with you now, she said, her tone final and strangely peaceful. It has found its way to you. You must trust that. And before Leo could form another question, before he could ask what any of it meant, he heard a soft click. The line went dead. She had hung up. He stood there on the busy street, the phone still pressed to his ear, the dull dial tone buzzing. People walked past him. Cars honked in the distance, the world continued on, but for Leo, everything had stopped. The words echoed in his mind. The piano was for the man who would come for it. Its journey is with you now. He looked at the large, boxy shape of his truck. Inside was no longer just an old, unwanted piece of furniture. It had been transformed. It was now a mystery. A purposefully given burden? A riddle wrapped in wood and wire. He was stuck with it. He couldn't take it to the dump now. Not after that. He had no idea what he was going to do, where he would store it, or what this journey was supposed to be. All he knew was that his ordinary day had just vanished, replaced by something he couldn't even begin to explain to his partner, his boss, or his wife. The piano had chosen him, and his life had suddenly become a lot more complicated. The drive back to the furniture depot was quiet, but it was a heavy, thinking kind of quiet. Leo's partner knew something was up, but he didn't ask. He could see the look on Leo's face, a mix of deep confusion and stubborn determination. When they arrived, Leo didn't even discuss it. He just started up the forklift and carefully moved the piano off the truck, placing it in a dusty, unused corner of the warehouse, away from the new sofas and shiny tables. What are you going to tell the boss? His partner finally asked, leaning against a stack of cardboard boxes. I'll figure it out, Leo said, his eyes still fixed on the piano. I'll pay for the storage if I have to. I can't get rid of it. Not yet. His partner just shook his head, whistled a low note, and walked away, leaving Leo alone with the strange, silent instrument. That evening, Leo drove home in his own small car, the weight of the day still sitting on his shoulders. He walked into his house, a cozy semi-detached home on a street that looked a lot like the one in Camden, but felt a world apart. The smell of a simple home-cooked dinner filled the air. His wife was in the kitchen stirring a pot on the stove. His young daughter was on the living room floor surrounded by colorful crayons and drawings of animals with too many legs. You're late, his wife said, turning to give him a quick kiss. Tough day? You could say that, Leo sighed, sinking into a chair at the kitchen table. He told her the whole story, the elderly woman, the confusing pickup, the strange phone call. He told her about the piano now sitting in his company's warehouse. His wife listened, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern. When he finished, she put down her wooden spoon. Leo, what are you doing? We don't have space for a piano. Your boss isn't going to let you keep a giant piano in the warehouse forever. It's just an old thing. Maybe you should have just taken it to the dump like they said. I know, Leo said, running a hand through his hair. It sounds crazy, but you didn't hear her voice. You didn't see the way she looked at it. She said it was for me. She said its journey was with me now. How could I just throw that away? His wife gave him a long, hard look. She was a practical person. She worried about bills and space and what the neighbors would think. but she also saw the genuine trouble in her husband's eyes. She let out a soft sigh. Okay, for now. But you need to figure this out and fast. We can't have a piano adventure, Leo. We have a life. Later that night, after his daughter was tucked into bed, Leo sat at the kitchen table with his laptop. He typed in searches like old piano mystery and Camden elderly woman piano, but nothing useful came up. It was a dead end. He felt foolish. What was he expecting? A website that explained it all? The next day was his day off. He woke up early, his mind still buzzing with the puzzle. After a quick breakfast, he drove to the depot. The warehouse was closed and silent. He used his key to let himself in, the big metal door groaning as he pushed it open. Sunlight streamed in through the high windows, lighting up dust motes dancing in the air. And there it was, the piano sitting under a gray cloth in the corner like a patient ghost. He pulled the cloth off. In the quiet of the empty warehouse, the piano seemed even bigger, even more full of secrets. He walked over to it and slowly lifted the lid that covered the keys. He pressed a single key. The note, a middle C, rang out in the vast empty space. It was a little out of tune, but the sound was clear and strong. It was a good sound. He then looked at the piano stool. It was a simple wooden stool that matched the piano. He had placed it on top of the stool after moving it. Now he picked it up. It was heavier than a normal stool. He turned it over, looking at the bottom. Nothing. He ran his hands over the sides. Then his fingers felt something. On the front of the stool, just under the seat, there was a tiny, almost invisible line in the wood. A seam. His heart beat a little faster. He took out his pocket knife, carefully sliding the tip of the blade into the thin crack. There was a soft click. A small, perfectly hidden panel, no bigger than his hand, swung open. It was a secret compartment. Inside, the space was filled with a small, neat bundle. He carefully pulled it out. It was a stack of old letters, tied together with a faded red ribbon. The paper was yellow and brittle, feeling like it could crumble to dust if he wasn't gentle. There was also a single black and white photograph. He sat down right there on the concrete floor of the warehouse, the dust forgotten. He untied the ribbon with trembling fingers. The top letter was dated June 1943. The handwriting was elegant and flowing, written in ink that had faded to a soft brown. My dearest Clara, it began. Leo's breath caught in his throat. He kept reading. The letter was from a young soldier, writing to the woman he loved. His name was Arthur. He wrote about the rain in France, about missing her smile, about dreaming of the little bakery where they used to meet. He wrote about the war, but not the scary parts. He wrote about the hope he held on to, the hope of coming home to her. Leo went through the letters one by one. They were a story of love and separation, filled with small, everyday details that made it all feel incredibly real. Arthur wrote about the songs Clara used to play on the piano. He said her playing was the sound of home to him. Then Leo picked up the last letter in the stack. It was dated October 1944. The tone was different, more urgent. My darling Clara. It read, I fear I may not have much time to write. Things are moving quickly here. But I must tell you this. I have written a song for you. I call it Clara's Lullaby. I have put the music somewhere safe, hidden in the one place I know it will always be connected to the sound of your heart. I have hidden it in our song's home. The letter ended abruptly as if he had been interrupted. There was no proper goodbye. Below the signature, someone else had written in a different, messier handwriting, reported missing in action. Leo looked at the photograph. It showed a young, handsome man in an army uniform, his arm wrapped around a beautiful, smiling young woman with bright eyes. They were standing in front of this very piano, sitting on the cold warehouse floor surrounded by the ghosts of a love story from long ago. Leo finally understood. The piano wasn't just a piece of furniture. It was a treasure chest. It was a promise. The old woman, Ilara, was Clara's daughter. She had kept her mother's most precious possession her whole life, knowing it held a secret but never finding it. And in her old age, she had let it go, sending it out into the world with a prayer that the right person would finally discover the truth her mother had waited a lifetime to hear. The piano's journey wasn't about moving from one place to another. It was about delivering a message. It was about finishing a story that had been left unfinished for decades. And now that job had landed squarely in Leo's lap. He wasn't just a delivery man anymore. He had become a detective, a historian, and the only hope for a love song that had been waiting for its final note for over 70 years. Leo sat on the cold warehouse floor for a long time. The old letters spread carefully around him. He felt like he had been let in on a deep, sad secret. The dust in the air, the quiet of the big empty building, and the words from the past all mixed together, making him feel both heavy and determined. He wasn't just confused anymore. Now he had a mission. He had to find the song. He had to finish this story. He carefully placed the letters and the photograph back into the secret compartment of the stool. He knew he couldn't keep this to himself any longer. He drove home, his mind racing faster than the car. When he walked through his front door, his wife was tidying up the living room. She took one look at his face and knew something big had happened. "Okay," she said, putting down the toy she was holding. "What is it? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I think I have," Leo said softly. He led her to the kitchen table and gently laid out his discovery. He showed her the photograph of the young couple, their faces full of hope. He read her a few lines from one of the letters, his voice a little unsteady. He told her about Arthur, about Clara, and about the lost song called Clara's Lullaby. His wife listened, her practical worries melting away, replaced by the power of the story. Her eyes grew moist as Leo read the final letter and the heartbreaking words, "Reported missing in action." "Oh, Leo," she whispered, her hand covering her mouth. This is real." "I know," he said. "I have to find it." "The letter says he hid the music in our song's home. That has to be the piano itself, right?" "Where else could it be?" His wife nodded, now fully on his side. "So what's the plan?" That evening, after their daughter was asleep, they sat together with his laptop. Leo didn't know where to start. He was a delivery driver, not a detective. He decided to tell the story online, hoping someone somewhere might know something. He found a website dedicated to local history in their area. He wrote a simple, honest post. He didn't use any real names, just the soldier's first name, Arthur, and mentioned the piano came from a house in Camden. He described the mystery of the hidden song and asked if anyone had any information about a soldier with that name from the Second World War who never came home. He clicked submit and leaned back, not expecting much. The internet was a big place, and this was a very old, small story. The next morning, he was woken up by his phone buzzing constantly. Not just a few times, but over and over. He picked it up, his eyes still blurry with sleep. He had dozens of notifications from the history forum. His post had dozens of replies, and private messages were flooding in. People were captivated. They shared the story. They offered help. A man who collected old military records found a listing for a soldier named Arthur, who had lived in Camden and was declared missing in late 1944. A woman who had grown up on that street remembered an elderly lady named Clara who lived alone and was very quiet, but was always kind to the children. The pieces were starting to fit together. Then he got a private message from a woman who identified herself as a local historian. Her message was exciting. "I believe I can help you," she wrote. "The details match a family story I came across in my research." The woman, Clara, never remarried. She lived in that house until she passed away many years ago. Her daughter, the woman you met, stayed in the house. She must be the one who gave you the piano. She would have known the story of the song, but perhaps she never knew where it was hidden. She was fulfilling her mother's last wish, to set the piano free so the song could finally be found. Leo's hands trembled as he read the message. It was all true. Every bit of it. Alara was Clara's daughter. She had carried this family sadness her whole life, and her final act was one of incredible faith. But the biggest breakthrough came later that afternoon. His phone rang. It was a music teacher who had seen the story online. She was a kind, older woman with a gentle voice. "I've been teaching piano for over 40 years, she said. "I've heard of things like this before." Composers from that time would sometimes hide sheet music in very clever places inside the instrument itself. They wanted to keep it safe. "If the letter says in our song's home, I think I know where to look." "May I come and see the piano?" Leo immediately drove to the warehouse to meet her. The music teacher arrived carrying a small bag of tools. She looked at the piano not as a piece of old furniture, but as a living thing with a story to tell. She opened the top lid and peered inside at the complex structure of hammers and strings. She gently pressed a few keys, listening to the tone. "It's a beautiful old instrument," she said softly. "It has a good heart, even if it's a little tired." Then she asked Leo to help her carefully lean the piano forward so she could look at the back. She ran her hands over the wood, tapping gently. She inspected every inch. Finally, she shook her head. "It's not on the back," she said. "The most common place, the place a musician would think of as the home of the music, is right where the sound is made." She had Leo set the piano upright again. She opened the front panel, the one that allowed a player to see the hammers strike the strings. She took a small, bright flashlight from her bag and shone it deep inside the piano's body, past the strings onto the felt-covered hammers. She was silent for a long moment, moving the light slowly across the rows of hammers. And then, she gasped. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. "There it is. Leo, look." He leaned in, peering into the complex inner world of the piano. At first, he didn't understand what he was seeing. On the felt of the hammers, he saw strange dark marks. They weren't random stains. They were shapes. They were musical notes. The music teacher explained, her voice filled with wonder. He didn't write it on paper. He knew paper could be lost or damaged. He copied the song, note by note, directly onto the felt hammers. He used ink or maybe even a special dye. Every time a key is pressed and a hammer strikes a string, that note of his song is played. The music has been living inside the piano all this time. It's been a part of its very voice for over 70 years. Leo stared, utterly amazed. The song hadn't been hidden in a box or a drawer. It had become a part of the instrument itself. Arthur had put his love for Clara into the heart of the thing that reminded him most of her. It was the most beautiful and clever thing Leo had ever seen. The music teacher immediately got to work. She took out a notebook and a pencil. Using a special mirror and her flashlight, she began the slow, careful process of copying the music from the hammers onto paper. It was like archaeology, uncovering a lost language. Note by note, measure by measure, the song that had been silent for a lifetime was finally being brought back into the light. Leo watched her, a lump in his throat. He thought of the elderly woman, Ilara, sitting alone in her house with this incredible secret sitting in her living room waiting. He thought of his own stubborn feeling that he couldn't throw the piano away. He had been right to listen to that feeling. He wasn't just delivering furniture anymore. He was delivering a lost piece of a human heart back to the world. And the most amazing part of the journey was yet to come. The music teacher worked for hours in the quiet warehouse. The only sounds were the soft scratch of her pencil on paper and the distant hum of traffic outside. Leo stayed with her the whole time, watching as the strange inky marks on the old piano hammers were slowly transformed into a beautiful, handwritten sheet of music. At the top of the page, the teacher wrote in elegant letters, "Clara's Lullaby." When she was finished, she played the melody slowly on a small keyboard she had brought with her. The notes were simple, gentle, and a little sad, but there was a thread of hope running through them. It was the sound of a young man's love sent across an ocean from a world at war. Hearing it for the first time in that dusty warehouse felt like a miracle. Now Leo knew what he had to do. This song wasn't just a piece of history. It was a message, and it needed to be delivered to its rightful home. He called the local historian who had helped him. Together they came up with a plan. They would organize a small gathering. They would invite the community that had helped solve the mystery. And most importantly, they would invite Ilara. They would perform the song for her, at the very church hall where this strange journey had almost ended. The church hall coordinator, who had once been so confused by the piano's arrival, was now thrilled to help. He spread the word among his congregation. The local history forum members were invited. The news even reached a local reporter who thought the story was too beautiful to ignore. The day of the gathering arrived. Leo stood at the door of the church hall, his heart pounding. He was nervous. He had worn his best shirt. The hall was not a grand concert hall, but it was warm and welcoming, filled with the soft light of the afternoon sun. People were filing in, kind-faced strangers who had followed the story online, members of the church, the historian, and the music teacher. The old piano, which had been carefully moved back to the hall, stood proudly on a small platform at the front. And then, he saw her. Ilara was being helped into the hall by a kind neighbor. She looked small and frail, but her eyes were bright and clear, taking in the scene. When she saw Leo, a slow, beautiful smile spread across her face. It was a smile of deep recognition, as if she had known all along that this day would come. Leo hurried over to her. "You came," he said. his voice thick with emotion. "Of course I came," she replied, her voice soft but steady. She placed a hand on his arm, just as she had on the day they first met. "I knew you were the one. The moment I saw you, I had a feeling. My mother always said the right person would find it." She was led to a special chair at the front of the room. The hall grew quiet. The music teacher sat down at the piano. Next to her, a young woman from the church. A talented violinist stood ready. The music teacher looked out at the audience, her eyes settling on Alara. 75 years ago, she began, her voice echoing softly in the hall. A young man far from home wrote a song for the woman he loved. He hid it away, hoping one day she would find it. That day never came for him or for her. But today it comes for their family. This is Clara's lullaby, she nodded to the violinist. Then, her fingers descended onto the keys of the very piano that had kept the secret for so long. The violin joined in, its sweet soaring voice blending with the gentle notes from the piano. The melody filled the room. It was more beautiful than when Leo had heard it in the warehouse. Played together by the two instruments, it was haunting and full of emotion. It spoke of love and loss, of memories and hope. People in the audience were visibly moved. Some had tears in their eyes. The reporter snapped pictures quietly, capturing the powerful moment. Leo watched Alara. She did not sob or cry out. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, but tears streamed down her wrinkled cheeks, catching the light. She was not looking at the musicians. She was looking through them as if she could see her mother and the young soldier she had never met, finally reunited by his music. It was the sound of a ghost finally being laid to rest. When the last note faded into silence, the hall was completely still for a moment. Then everyone erupted into warm, heartfelt applause. Alara slowly stood up. She turned first to the musicians and gave them a small, graceful bow of thanks. Then she turned to the audience and did the same. But her final gesture was for Leo. She walked towards him, her steps slow but sure. She didn't say a word. She simply opened her arms and embraced him. It was a long, warm hug, a hug full of a lifetime of waiting and gratitude. Leo hugged her back, his own eyes stinging with tears. "You brought him home to her," she whispered into his ear. "After all this time, you finished their story. Thank you." In that moment, every mile driven, every moment of confusion, every strange look from his boss was worth it. He had delivered something more valuable than any piece of furniture. The story of the delivery man and the piano amazed everyone who heard it. It was in the local paper the next week. But for Leo, the real amazement wasn't in the newspaper. It was in the quiet satisfaction he carried inside. The piano found a permanent home in that church hall. A small brass plaque was placed on it that read, "In memory of Arthur and Clara, a song lost in war, found by love and returned home by a community." The children in the youth club now learned their first notes on it, their simple scales mixing with the echoes of the old lullaby. Life for Leo returned to normal. He was back to delivering sofas and bookshelves. But he was a slightly different man. He drove his roots with a new awareness. He knew that every house, every person, every old object he picked up might have a story hidden inside it. He had learned that the world was full of invisible connections, and that sometimes an ordinary person can be chosen to do something extraordinary. He had been a part of a miracle, not a loud, flashy one, but a quiet, gentle one made of paper, ink, wood, and most of all, love. And he knew, without a doubt, that he would never look at a delivery job the same way again.